It's my conviction that once we've been involved in project management for any period of time, the way that we learn is not through books and videos and seminars. Primarily, it's by learning lessons from our real experiences. So for me, a lessons learned meeting is a vital part of your responsibility as a project manager. In this video, I want to talk about how to hold an excellent lessons learned meeting. I've already done a video that answers the question, what are lessons learned? But to summarise, lessons learned are an opportunity to look at our successes and see what we can learn from them, and to look at what's gone wrong and also see what we can learn from that. But more than that, failures are often the unintended consequences of causes back down the line. So a lessons learned meeting is an opportunity to trace causes and effects, to find out how small actions early on in the project can influence the outcome of the final project. And finally, of course, lessons learned meetings are a chance to develop a set of recommendations for things to do differently next time. But the most important recommendations are the ones that you internalise in your own mind for your own performance and behaviour and choices next time you're involved in a project. So the next thing to think about is when to hold your lessons learned meeting. And I would say there are 3 times when lessons learned meetings are particularly relevant. And the first, of course, is at the end of the project. Pretty much every project manager knows that at the end of the project you need to sit down with your team and hold a lessons learned review. But some are sceptical, even cynical about the value of this, because they are used to producing lessons learned reports for the organisation, which then end up getting filed on the top shelf or filed in the small round filing cabinet by the door. Because in too many organisations, lessons learned review reports are not read, not understood, and not acted upon. But even if you have this level of scepticism, I would say that for you, lessons learned meetings remain vital. Because the value of the lessons learned meeting is not just for the organisation. Its principal value is for the people who are attending the lessons learned meeting. So, a lessons learned meeting at the end of the project is a non-negotiable aspect of my project management methodology. So, when are the other 2 times that you would hold a lessons learned review meeting? Well, the first of those is in the middle of the project. And I don't just mean find the halfway point and hold a lessons learned review. I mean hold constant series of short lessons learned discussions throughout the duration of the project. Because there is no point waiting to the end of the project to find out that one team member had a brilliant idea, worked magnificently for them, that we could all have adopted during the project to make a big difference. Equally, if someone's discovered a problem and has learned a lesson from it themselves, wouldn't it be great if we could all learn that lesson during the project so that no one else falls into the same bear trap? So I will always hold a series of lessons learned meetings as part of regular team meeting cycles. The third time to hold a lessons learned review is at the beginning of the project, when you first get your team together, or early on in the definition stage, the early stage of your project. Get your team together and talk about the lessons they've learned from previous experiences, the lessons you've learned from previous experiences, so that you can discuss how to apply those lessons to the particular circumstances of this project. Now you need to think about preparing your lessons learned meeting. You're going to have a bunch of your team members together for a period of time. That has a huge cost, and therefore the meeting has to have an equivalent value, at least. So you need to prepare to make sure that you can harvest that value. And there are 4 key things to prepare for a lessons learned meeting. First, you need to gather data. Make sure you've got all of the information from which you can discuss lessons learned. what's actually happened so that we can root our cause and effect analysis in reality. Second, you need to set an agenda. You need to determine what you're going to speak about and how you're going to facilitate the process. Third, you need to think about logistics, where you're going to hold the meeting, when you're going to hold the meeting. What equipment, materials will you need to make the meeting work well? What's the right kind of environment for the sort of discussion you want to hold? Do you want an informal environment with soft chairs, or a formal environment with tables, or a standing environment because you want a brief, quick meeting that gets things done in a very business-like manner? And the final thing to think about is attendance. Who should be there? Do you want the whole team for this meeting? Or do you want team leaders? Or do you want to facilitate a lessons learned meeting for a part of your team, perhaps 1 or 2 work streams? In thinking about your agenda, you need to structure the meeting. So let's keep it simple and look at a basic framework for a meeting that you can develop for any lessons learned meeting by enhancing it, adding to it, and varying it to meet your needs and the style and approaches of the people that will be attending your meetings. The first of the 4 stages that I'm going to discuss is the opening of the meeting, getting it kicked off, welcoming people, introducing the agenda, and perhaps talking about the kind of mood, the kind of style you want to have for the meeting, what your expectations are of the meeting and what your expectations are of your colleagues. The second stage, the meat of your lessons learned meeting, if you like, is the discussion and exploration of the issues, of the observations, of the lessons individuals have learned. I hope that you will have invited people to think about their experiences ahead of the meeting. Give each individual a chance to talk about what they've observed and the lessons they'd like to draw or the things they'd like to understand better. Get all of that noted down, find some themes, and then facilitate a discussion around the most fruitful things first. Get people to prioritise them. This is where the real value of the meeting is, because the things that follow will formalise what you learn. Because remember, the value of the meeting is for the individuals to reflect on their experiences and listen to the experiences of others, and that's what happens at this stage of the meeting. But the next stage of the meeting is still valuable. It's where either you or someone that you ask to do the job will draw conclusions from the discussion. With a big group, you might ask small groups on tables to draw their own conclusions from the discussion and present them to the team. But as a minimum, by the end of this stage, you should have the skeleton of a document that you can use as an aid memoir and as a checklist of recommendations. And the final step is to close the meeting. Thank people for their attendance, thank people for their contributions, and let people know what will happen next. Are you going to publish the discussion that you've had in some form? Are you going to follow up with people? Have you allocated responsibilities and roles to individuals to lead on some of the recommendations that the meeting has come up with? And when you've finally finished, close the meeting formally and let people get back to their jobs or go home. So what sort of outcomes can you expect from a good lessons learned meeting? Well, 4 come to mind. Firstly, enhancing the professional experience, expertise, understanding, competence and confidence of the people who are attending. A good lessons learned meeting will allow people to leave feeling that they've learned something of value to them in their career and in their role. Secondly, are some beneficial recommendations either for the rest of this project or for future projects, or possibly both. Thirdly, setting up a knowledge base that will enable future projects to work more effectively, more efficiently, and possibly to avoid future problems. One of the recommendations I always have is that as professionals, we keep lists of the risks that we identify on our project and of the stakeholders that we identify, so that for our next project we've got a ready-made starter list of risks or a starter list of stakeholders. These are assets. They're assets for an organisation, but they're also assets for each of us as individuals and as professionals. And finally, if you really have ambition, then you should be looking to use your lessons learned reviews as the basis for establishing good practices throughout your organisation to spread beyond the project. A set of recommendations, a set of ideas, or simply a set of changes in behaviour can drive change well beyond your project. And I think as project managers, that's an ambition that we should cleave to. Finally, after the meeting, as with all meetings, it's crucial to do the follow-up. If the meeting was worthwhile, then you need to do the follow-up to get the real value from it. So what are some of the things that we need to do to follow up on a lessons learned meeting? First, we need to document our recommendations, our action points, and our observations. And second, we need to circulate that document to our team and possibly more widely through the organisation or the organisations involved in your project. Third, you need to follow up on the actions that you've allocated to team members to make sure they understand what's expected of them and to make sure that they get them done and find out what they learn from doing them and how they work. Fourth, I would brief my sponsor and the governance tier of my project on the lessons learned process and what we've learned. The highlights, yes, not all of the details necessarily, unless they're interested. If appropriate, take what you've learned and speak with the people that hold your organisation's own project management methodology or its own project management book of knowledge or whatever it has, and look to influence changes to that, if appropriate, to take into account what you've learned on your project. Sixth, informally, speak to other project managers and share what you've learned. And seventh, if you get the opportunity, then take what you've learned and take opportunities to speak more widely in more public forums, to address conferences, seminars, workshops, because that's how we build our professional eminence and our careers. So I hope you can see not only that a good lessons learned meeting is hugely valuable to you, to your team members and to your organisation, but also have some ideas about how to do it really well yourself. If you've enjoyed this video, please do give us a like. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you hear about all of our future videos, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.